Hi everybody, how you doing? It's Chris here. Welcome back to the channel, and this is the 30 for 30 real world problems and solutions series. If you're watching on replay, you want to get straight into the learning content, just skip forward a couple of minutes. But this, of course, is the series where I've taken 30 situations, problems, challenges that I encounter all the time in my Excel VBA and spreadsheet work, and converted them into 30 little exercises, each one that we can complete hopefully in about 30 minutes. And this is the idea. So we've got 30 sessions of about 30 minutes, and it's to take your coding from a beginner level, post-beginner level, intermediate level, and moving it up towards a professional level. And more importantly, giving you an idea of how you can apply VBA code and Excel more generally to solve real world problems. So in a second, we'll get into the random problem generator and we'll find what we're working on today. But first, let's say hello to people in the chat. So big welcome back to Jeffrey. Jeffrey, how are you doing? Jeffrey says Java helps with VBA, not the code, but the brew. Absolutely. Why not? What are you drinking today, guys? Jazz has some coffee on. Fantastic stuff. Well, it's breakfast time for you, Jazz. Yeah, early in the morning. Michael is here. How are you doing, Michael? Good to see you again. Keeping that run of consecutive appearances in the live sessions going. I love that. Fantastic stuff. Katie's back. Good to see you, Katie. How are you doing today? And it must be early for you, Katie, if you're over across the pond as well, over in Canada, I believe. Keith tuning in today, one of our members, Monday members. Keith joined us earlier in the series. Keith joined us in the session, and later I'll share the link if you want to come and join me, have a chat. We had Lee dropping in yesterday, telling us about how he's learned VBA and the progress he's been able to make, the time he's been able to save. So we will share the link a little bit later. So look out for that. Big welcome to DC. How are you getting on? And thank you, Keith, for telling me that the sound and vision is good. And Katie, yeah, some cappuccino for Katie. You know what? I'm a cappuccino man. If I have to get a coffee, I don't drink much coffee because it puts me on edge a bit. Caffeine does. I have one coffee in the morning. Sometimes I don't even have that, and that's quite enough for me. But if I do ever have a coffee, I would have a cappuccino. There we go. Right, into the random problems generator. Without further ado, there goes the balls, and the tension is killing me. What are we going to be looking at today? What have we got? Stuff about message boxes to come. We've got stuff about moving data from database to a table. What is coming? Make Excel VBA code execute more efficiently. Okay. Interesting stuff. So this is going to be a little more conceptual than technical. This one's a little more difficult to demonstrate, but I will put this to the chat straight away. How can we make Excel VBA code execute efficiently? There's a big question. Feels like a kind of essay question, doesn't it? Or maybe you don't view it like that. Maybe for you, it's very simple. What ideas do we have for making Excel VBA code execute efficiently? Yeah, I love VBA, definitely. Just today I've been working on 2 customer projects. Customers very happy with what's going on. That's having a big impact on what they're doing. But it can get difficult. We've all been in those situations, haven't we, where VBA seems to be working fine, nice and efficiently and smoothly. Then suddenly the time to execute the code just goes up, and suddenly things become unusable. And that's incredibly annoying. It's bad anyway when things go wrong in Excel, when you've got to fix a formula. But with VBA, it can be even more difficult to fix. And there's that sense of this loss of control that can have a real negative impact on your experience with Excel, but more importantly, your customer's experience with Excel. So it's really important for us to be able to make Excel VBA code execute efficiently. Okay, so what ideas have we got? Let's get some ideas going. Got some great ideas coming in already, but if you had to speed up a macro, let's say, how can we speed up a macro? Let's put it nice and simple in the spreadsheet. Let's get some ideas going in the chat. Already, we've got some good ideas coming in. So Keith is saying remote referencing 100%. So what do we mean by remote referencing? You might want to stop the stream if you're watching on replay. Alt HOW 100 here, and Alt HOW 100, and then just go ahead and Think about what does that mean? Remote referencing. What's the opposite of remote referencing? It's a great shout from Keith. What are the shouts that we got here? I'm going to take these one by one. I'm going to speed them up, and I guarantee I'll have more ideas than you. There's a challenge today. I've got probably 5 or 10 ideas for this. I've got specific technical stuff, specific lines of code that you can use, that you can add to your routines. I've also got some more general ideas, remote referencing being one of those. Big welcome to Bart. Bart tuning in today. Okay, Bart waiting to for his daughter at the music school. So Bart, I know we've been chatting today, but always good to see you tuning in. Right, what ideas have we got? How can we speed up macro? Jasfin says, I think using for each rather than some other looping technique, depending on the data size, but I'm still testing that out. Okay, that could be one. That's kind of an advanced idea, Jazz, but I think there could be something in that. But let's deal with the quick wins first. Like, what quick wins have we got? Loving this from Michael. Michael is saying, turn off screen updating. Very good. Screen updating. And I'm going to start categorizing these. I've got Excel open, of course. We can use the grid. We can categorize. And I'm going to say this is a QW. This is a quick win. So let's go and get some quick wins down here, and then I'll get in the VBA editor and show you how to switch these quick wins on. Bart is saying, great idea here. Maybe set calculation to off. Okay, set calculation to manual. That speeds things up dramatically, even more than screen updating, particularly if you've got complicated formulae in there. I'm going to go ahead and say that that's a QW. That's a quick win. Okay, yep, liking this from Jazz as well. So Jazz is saying, don't display data status bar. Interesting. Okay, that wasn't one that I was thinking of. Don't display status bar, D-I-S-P-A-L-A. Don't display status bar. Okay. Okay, good. And then we've got, so Katie, very good. Katie is saying remove superfluous lines. Good. I've got a couple more of quick wins that I can think of here. Superfluous lines of code. And then what else have we got? Okay, enable events. That's on fire here. Enable events, switch off. Okay, all of these, I'm not recommending these. I'm not fully recommending any of these. All of these, yes, they will get us some kind of win. They will speed things up, but also they all come with a health warning as well. Enable events, enable alerts. I think it's, do you mean enable alerts here, Jazz? I think it's enable alerts. So do you want to save the file and stuff like that? So that would come with a health warning, definitely. Okay, good. So Katie says, don't use data type. What does that mean exactly, Katie? I'm interested in that one. Can you give me a few more notes in the chat, see if we can get into that one? Okay, this is good from Bart. So Bart is saying, okay, use conditional statements. We might come back to that one later. That's a little more complicated. Okay, DC is saying, okay, so DC is saying use an array instead of a loop. Okay, good. So good ideas coming in. I'm loving this from Keith. I was looking for this one. Use with, end with. Excellent. Right. That could be a quick win. This one could be a quick win. Okay, and oh, Jazz is saying definitely events. Okay, do events. Yeah. This do events line of code. I think this could be relevant and interesting. Okay, good. And Ebby's here. Ebby, how are you doing? Yeah, Ebby, the topic is how can we speed up a macro? How can we make Excel VBA code execute efficiently? Won't be a particularly technical session, I don't think, but we will get into the VBA editor and at least see what this code looks like. Right, so let's do that now. Into the VBA editor. I'm going to close down the random problem selector. Okay, here we go. Okay, then what have we got? Insert a module here. Okay, option explicit at the top. Right. I've got one that I've just encountered recently that I'm going to throw in here. Let's say demo sub here. So if you're using module level variables, do you clear them after code has executed? So this does help speed things up. So I'm going to say here, clear module level variables after code execution. That's something I've just found recently. We're doing this project at the moment. I've been working on it today. Alt W3 here. I've been working on it today where we're generating, well, we're creating an Excel-based system to create PowerPoints from a spreadsheet. We've got some data in there. They want to click a button, and then it does some calculations and creates a PowerPoint. And I've learned, we should clear module level variables. If we don't do that, it can slow things down. It actually affects the performance of future macros as well. Even if the macro finishes, you could still be holding a value in the module level variable. So clear them at the end of the macro. The end of a macro, that's just good practice. I didn't always do that, and it actually caused a problem on this project. And Keith absolutely is saying clear those arrays as well. Yeah, if you're going to use an array instead of a loop, make sure you clear those as well. Good. So let's go through some of these quick wins. Whoops. Just got into Excel help there for a second. HRW40 hit. So the quick wins, turn off screen updating. This to me is the most obvious one. When would you not do this? I think basically you'd always want to do this. A specific situation where you wouldn't want to do this, well, for example, the random problem generator. And I should mention, if you're excited about the random problem generator that we use at the beginning of each stream, we've got a video for you. We've got a video which is about the secrets of the random problem generator, and I go through the specific mechanism that's in there, which is called Monte Carlo simulation. So it uses random numbers, probability distributions, and other bits and pieces. Really exciting, powerful little mechanism. The link is in the email description below if you'd like to get a little bit of extra Tiger content. When you sign up for that, it's free, but you will get an email from me about our Members Monday community. If you like these live sessions, you'll love our Members Monday community. So, but that's an example of when you might want to keep screen updating switched on, because the user needs to be able to see that there's something going on. There's something visual that you want the user to be able to appreciate. And in our case, we've got the balls kind of jumping around in the machine. That's the effect that we're trying to convey to the user. But it's quite rare. It's quite rare during a macro that you want something visual to be going on. However, you might want to update the user on the progress of the macro. Now, if you want to do that, that's a sensible thing to do to make sure the user understands that something is happening. I wouldn't do that by keeping the screen updating on. If the screen updating is on, the screen's going to be flickering. That does give a sense that there's progress, but it's going to slow things down a lot potentially. So if you want to switch screen updating off, but retain the idea that something's happening, I recommend using the status bar down here. So it's application.status bar, I believe. We'll do that in a second. Anyway, the specific line of code for switch off screen updating is application.screenUpdating. Tab there equals false. And then we've got to remember at the end, we've got to remember to switch screen updating back on. So all of these do come with a bit of a health warning. We've got to make sure we reverse these, we switch them back on once the macro is done. Otherwise, there could be some unnatural behavior in Excel, and there could be some disasters, like if you switch off alerts. So for example, saving the file, that wouldn't display, and somebody might be mightily disgruntled if they were expecting the usual "do you want to save your file" notification to pop up, and they can just click save. If that didn't pop up and the file just disappeared, you could have a problem. So as programmers, we've got to make sure we're leaving Excel in kind of a natural state. We're not creating any unnatural behavior in Excel. So at the end of the macro, we'd want to switch screen updating back on. So this is one that I can pretty much wholeheartedly recommend, as long as you remember to switch screen updating back on. So this, I think, is a good one. Okay, anything else in the chat? I'm just trying to block this user who's, come on guys, we've got a spreadsheet stream going with 12 users. Do you really want to come and spam this? But I think I've managed to block that user, so I think that's okay. It's given me an error now. Let's try to block this user one more time. If not, we'll just carry on. Okay, not having any luck there. Anyway, so screen updating, yeah, generally recommended. Now the next one, the next quick win, I'd say setting calculation to manual. Now, this one comes with more of a health warning, but also can get you a really big gain in terms of the runtime of the code, the execution time, if you have, particularly if you have lots of formulae. If you have lots of formulae in your spreadsheet, this could make a massive difference. What are we doing when we're setting calculation to manual? Well, we are creating some unnatural behavior in Excel. That's why this has got to be handled with care. But what we're doing effectively, if you go to the Formulas tab, Calculations, you can set calculation to manual here. I'm going to go ahead and do that and just show to you what I mean by unnatural behavior. If I put a simple formula in here, so we're adding up these two cells, and then calculation is now manual. If I change the value in this cell, you'll see this formula doesn't update. So we lose the instant calculation quality that many people associate with Excel. You know, that's the reason we love Excel. We get that instant calculation. So if we switch calculation off, we're going to lose that. So we've got to make sure we remember to switch it back on. So application.calculation equals, you got semi-automatic here. Interesting. So we want to set this to manual at the beginning of the routine. And then, very important to remember to switch it back on to automatic. And something to look out for here, particularly when you're testing, if the routine doesn't execute all the way to these final lines of code. So if you're testing the routine, you know, you're stepping through it and you don't get to the end, or if you just have some kind of bug and you don't get to the end of the routine, you've got to remember that Excel won't automatically put calculation back on. Yeah, it won't just put it back on because the macro has crashed. So that's something for us to look out for, that Excel calculation automatic, and then switching screen updating back on. Now, I remember Keith, who's in the chat here. A big welcome to other Keith. Welcome, Keith. How are you doing? Whereabouts is other Keith based? You let us know, and let us know what you're trying to get done in Excel. Keith, good to have you with us. Yeah, but this Keith Dangerfield, who's one of our Members Monday members, one of our most diligent Members Monday members as well. Keith is working through our library of Members Monday streams. We've got 107 streams in the library, sessions very much like this one, but they've never been seen publicly. Keith is working through them one by one. Fantastic stuff. But one thing that Keith has been doing is these macros, Keith has been modulating out into a different macro. So you might have a macro here saying sub switch off. Or, yeah, something like switch off calculation etc. So calculation and screen updating. Then you do all those things in this routine, and then in the main routine you can just say at the top, call this routine. Okay, that's not something I do. Maybe I should be doing that, but yeah, you could take these commands that we're putting in, put them in another routine, and then just call that routine so that they're not repeated all the way through your module and all of the way through your project. Now, there may be times when you do want Excel to calculate. Yeah, if you've got formulae in your spreadsheet and the VBA is referring to those formulae, yeah, this happens very frequently. You have formulae and VBA combined together. Then you would want Excel to calculate, and this could catch you out. If you're inputting some values to cells using VBA, then you want the result of some calculations from that. You're going to have to make Excel calculate. You can do that with a calculate command in VBA, or if all of the calculations are on one specific sheet, then you can use a sheet name like this. So Excel will just try to calculate a sheet. I found this a bit problematic. I found that this doesn't always create, stable and accurate answers, but clearly I'm not fully understanding what's going on here. So I usually just go for calculate if you need to make Excel calculate. Okay, good. So a couple of quick wins there. Keita in Coventry in the USA. Okay, so Coventry is not too far from me in the UK. Anyway, Keith, good to have you with us, and let us know what you're trying to get done in Excel. Okay, so we've spoken about screen updating. We've spoken about setting calculation to manual. Now, the next one I would consider would probably be switching alerts off. So what's this? Application.alerts, is it? Is it show alerts? Display alerts. There we go, display alerts. Application.display alerts equals false. Okay, now this one, as I said, comes with an even bigger health warning, I would say. So we've got to reverse that again. When would you use this? You'd use this if your macro is doing something that would usually flash up an alert. Now, the thing that comes to mind is if you're deleting sheets. If you've got a macro to delete sheets, who knows what you're doing? You're moving data into a different file. You want to clean out sheets in that file. Could be doing anything. It's a common thing to want to do, to delete worksheets. What happens when we try to delete a worksheet in Excel, put a new sheet in the file here and just hit delete? Then we get this alert. Okay. Let's see if we can just switch that alert off. I'm just going to say experiment here. Of course. And then I'm just going to try switching the alerts off. And then let's see what happens. So if I, is this going to happen? Let's see. I've just run through that macro to the end of the macro. And now if I say delete, okay, so at the end of the macro, that seemed to switch the alerts back on. Okay, so maybe they switched automatically back on at the end of the macro. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. But it's certainly something to look out for, because you don't want a situation, as I said, where the user is casually closing the file, waiting for that usual save notification that we get, and they're going to do a save and they're unable to do that. We really want to avoid that situation. Another situation where I've used this, and just this afternoon, actually, I was using this, where you want to save the file. You want to save the file as a copy. What we're doing with this customer is we're creating PowerPoint templates, and there's a load of data, kind of one row per PowerPoint template. So we're going through this data, creating a PowerPoint file presentation for each row. And then I think we might be using that. We might be using display alerts, because when we save as, we don't want any notifications popping up saying confirm save or something like that. Also, when you close files as well. So these are some reasons. Some reasons you might want to use display alerts. Once again, as with all of these, it comes with a bit of a health warning there. Okay. Okay, yeah, DC says display alerts only works on actions taken by the code. Okay, good stuff. Good. Bart's got to go. Thanks for joining us, Bart. I'm sure we'll see you tomorrow or see you soon. Good stuff. So that's really the quick wins. What else have we got? So now I think we can go on to thinking about the general kind of makeup of the code here. So I'm going to invite you to look at some code. I'm going to go into the random problem generator. Let's look at this code and let's try to, that's not the file, random problem selector, there it is. Just give me some ideas here for how could we make this code execute more efficiently. Now, this file I created some time ago now. Let's go back to our screen view here. Created this file some time ago. So it's a good file for kind of looking back on how I used to write code and getting ideas for writing code better. But there's a couple of ideas here that come to mind. One is I can't see with end with here. Yeah. you can see here, I'm not even using the sheet. We found this yesterday. I'm not even referencing the sheet here. So this kind of thing. So if we said with sheets lottery, then end with here, this is good. Now, this is preferable to this that I'll go ahead and demonstrate now. It's a little bit artificial because I hadn't initially written the code like this. I just assumed that lottery would be the active sheet. It's preferable to doing this. So we're trying to avoid repeated syntax, repeated constructs in code. We're trying to avoid that. Have you ever got this situation? I had this situation this afternoon as well, where I had a repeated construct. Now, if this is a sheet, if this is a workbook, if this is a range, say you're offsetting from an anchor cell, this I commonly use with and with in this situation. And you can go ahead, rather than having that repeated syntax, you can delete all of these, and you can, now you'll find this code is going to run in exactly the same way, but not exactly the same way, because it's going to run a little bit more efficiently. Like I've found this one doesn't create massive efficiencies, but it can make, you know, a 10, 20, 30% difference. So certainly looking out for opportunities to use with, end with, but more generally using as little code as possible. Using as little code as possible. You know, that's a difficult thing to do. So we've got to think about, okay, what are the kind of practical ideas to help us? And we've got a few here. Use with, end with. Absolutely. Here I've used it with a sheet. You could use it with a range object that's controlling a variable. As I said, you could use it with an anchor cell that you're offsetting away from. Wherever you've got that repeated construct, you should be thinking, can I avoid that? You can often avoid that with and end with. Okay, good. Yeah. And Keith's also mentioned here remote referencing. What do we mean by remote referencing? Well, let's go into into this workbook, and let's go into here. Yep. So when you first start VBA, let's say remote reference example. And this is how I first learned VBA. And this is when I started teaching VBA. This is how I first taught VBA as well. So let's say we want to put a value into A1 on sheet 3. Okay, first we're going to do it in the opposite of remote referencing. First, we're going to do it with a direct referencing. Okay, so direct referencing would be like this. So direct referencing, we'd actually activate that sheet. So I'm going to say sheets, sheet 3 here, dot activate. And then this is what I used to do. And then I used to go range A1 dot select, and then active cell maybe, or selection, active cell dot value equals, we're here. Finally. There we go. So, and let's just step through this code using the F8 key, activating sheet 3, selecting A1, it was selected anyway, and then the value goes into the cell. Okay. This is how I learned VBA, and I see this all the time in macros. Often it happens where people have recorded macros as well, because if you think about it, when you record a macro, you're going to click on a sheet, you're going to click on a cell. All of those actions are going to be recorded. So a good way to improve the efficiency of your code is to use direct referencing. So rather than doing those 3 actions, we can do that in a single line of code by saying something like sheets, sheet 3 dot range A1 dot value equals, we're here. There we go. So they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing, but this approach, we're getting things done with much less code there. Okay, good. 20 people with us today. Thanks very much. So we're talking about how to make Excel VBA code execute efficiently. It's been fantastic having people dropping into the stream, guys. Well, thanks so much for watching anyway. But it's been great to have people dropping into the stream. We had Keith dropping in last week. That was fantastic. We had Henrik dropping in before that. We had Lee dropping in yesterday. I'd love to have a chat, guys. And it's not too nerve-wracking. You know, people who've joined the stream who were like, oh, it's quite nerve-wracking, I feel quite nervous about doing it. I've had a few of them in the stream. They were like, actually, it wasn't that bad. And I think it's great for other people to be able to learn, just hear your perspective, hear another learner's perspective. I think that's very powerful. So yeah, all you've got to do is follow the link through, and then you'll come into our backstage area. It's very simple, straightforward. Just make sure you're in a quiet room. You can do it on your phone or on your computer. Make sure there's not too many people around. Make sure there's no music playing in the background. And then you just close down the YouTube interface, and then I can add you into the stream. We can have a chat. So that will be fantastic. Good. Okay, so remote referencing rather than direct referencing. And I found that this can make a massive difference. And I would add to this. Let's go ahead. I'm going to say Chris here. I would add to this only write to the spreadsheet when necessary. Okay, can you remember? It wasn't yesterday's stream. It was the stream from the day before. Okay, let me do a very quick example here. Do an example here with VLOOKUP. This is how I used to do stuff. Okay, just bear with me a second. Shift spacebar, Control Shift plus, let's say name, idea, and then was it a quick win? Okay, let's use VLOOKUP down here. I just want to look up the idea, and then was it a quick win? Okay, now clearly this is a very contrived example here, but it will give you the idea. Now, often in VBA code, you want to look up a data item. So I want to look up the idea, and then you want a value from another column in the same row, Now, we know we can do that with VLOOKUP. Yeah. So I want to look up the value in this cell, comma. This is the table array. And the shift key here, and then I want to look up a value from the second column, and then exact match will do the job here. So let's go Control C and Control V. And then can you see that's not updating? Why is that not updating? That's not updating because we're still in manual calculation, of course. So I'll switch the calculation back to automatic now. Yeah, so often you want to do this in VBA. Yeah. This is how I used to do it. So I would actually write the value into the cell, yeah, and then make Excel calculate, although back in these days, I probably would have had calculation on automatic anyway, and then take the value from column D. So I'm writing a value to the spreadsheet, making Excel calculate, making VLOOKUP do the work, and then getting the value back in. So you're back out. So you're writing in and then getting a value back out. Yeah. Now that's no disaster. Don't get me wrong. And you can get a lot done in that way, but it's not an efficient way to get stuff done. Okay. What is the alternative here? The alternative is use application.worksheet function. Like, Chris, what on earth is that? Yeah, I agree. Sounds like a crazy idea. It's not very intuitive at all. But application.worksheet function gives you the power of a formula. I often use match VLOOKUP and COUNTIF in this way, gives you the power of a formula without actually having Hi guys, apologies for that. I hope you can hear me. Just had some kind of power issue here. But yeah, I was talking about application.worksheet function. So application.worksheet function means you get the power of the formula without having to actually have a formula hanging around in your Excel file. So I do recommend that. Good. So I think we've covered most of the points here. Hopefully everybody's back now. So with we cover remote referencing, screen updating, set calculation to manual. All of these come with some minor health warnings that I mentioned. Some of them fairly major health warnings. We've talked about removing superfluous lines of code using with, using conditional statements in the right way. Basically, we want to avoid repetition. If you've got the same coding construct syntax repeated, then that's something we want to avoid. With can help us do that. We've talked about switching alerts off. So when you get the notification, do you want to close the file? Do you want to delete a sheet? That comes with a big health warning. Now, this one I don't have much experience of. Give it a try. If you're using a loop, you're looping through a huge amount of data and it's just taking ages, this might be an alternative for you, putting it into an array. We have a video on the channel called Excel VBA Arrays for Beginners, and you can check that video out. I would say I've never used this approach and I've looped through a lot of data. I haven't found it necessary yet, but if you need more efficiency, then that's something you could do. Using with we've spoken about. Now, do events I've found just can help occasionally if you have mysterious error messages. You're getting error messages for no reason. There's some very specific situations where do events can help. So maybe not with improving efficiency, but it's just a good line of code to know about. Clearing module level variables after code execution, I mentioned at the beginning, and then using application.worksheet function rather than putting values into the spreadsheet. Okay, good. Yeah, so apologies for that little interlude, guys. Any final questions today? Any final questions? Just looking through the chat here, what questions have we got? Albert's got a point here. Albert says, even with a sheet reference like with sheet.range code end with gives that issue. So I slow down the code by activating that sheet first. Not always though. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would recommend trying to move to a fully remote approach. Now, fully remote approach with your VBA code means it doesn't matter what sheet you're on, and maybe it doesn't matter which file you're in. It doesn't matter which file is active. If you're using multiple files, your code is still going to work. I think you've really got to move towards that. It means more advanced coding, more sophisticated coding, but it usually means a more robust and efficient solution as well. Good. Okay. Can't see any more questions coming in, guys. Right. So we'll be back on Friday. So there's no streams tomorrow, guys. I'm having a rest on Thursdays, but we're back on Friday and we'll be back with part 21 of this series, which is Excel VBA, the real world 30 problems and solutions series. And remember, if you're like, oh, I fancy a bit more Tiger content, remember, we've got the secrets of the random task generator. So the file that I use at the beginning of each of these streams, it's got a nice animation in. It's got a random selection mechanism that's driven by Monte Carlo simulation. We've got a 45-minute tutorial that's available. You've got to put your email in. And when you sign up your email there, it's absolutely free. You will get an automated email about our members community, which is Members Monday. If you enjoy these streams, you enjoy having a chat with people in the chat, you enjoy being part of a little community, you enjoy the ritual of turning up and learning a bit and speaking to like-minded people, you should be in Members Monday. It is that simple. It is fantastic, value for money, and we have a great time. We have real results from Members Monday, people making real progress. Good. Can't see any more questions in the chat, guys. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you Friday, 4 o'clock UK time for the next one. Take care.